ચાલુ કર્યું હવે. Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel. I'm MD General Physician. Today we'll be talking on one of the rare valvular heart disease which sometime you can see in your everyday practice. That is pulmonary stenosis, pulmonary regurgitation, tricuspid stenosis, tricuspid regurgitation. So first we'll be talking about pulmonary stenosis, which is common in your everyday practice, but not as common as mitral and aortic valve. So as usual, by definition, pulmonary stenosis, it is decrease in pulmonary valvular area during right ventricular systole, less than 1/3 the original size. Then we call that as pulmonary stenosis. Depending on the age, etc., the diameter or the area of pulmonary valvular opening will be there. If it is less than 2 square centimeter, usually it will be a mild pulmonary stenosis. It can be valvular stenosis, it can be infundibular or we call subvalvular, or it can be supravalvular. These are the three common words which are being utilized. As far as terminology is concerned, we can divide into congenital and acquired. Among congenital, it can be isolated or it can be associated with other congenital heart disease. Isolated is usually 2 cusps. Normally there are 3 cusps in pulmonary valve. So in isolated, it can be bicuspid pulmonary stenosis. When it is associated with other congenital defect like ventricular septal defect, it can be pulmonary atresia or it can be a tight pulmonary stenosis, where if it is pulmonary atresia or a tight pulmonary stenosis, it can be associated with other congenital heart disease like ASD or PDA, more commonly PDA rather than ASD. Pulmonary infundibular pulmonary stenosis with VSD and overriding of aorta, we call tetralogy of Fallot. And when tetralogy of Fallot is associated with ASD, it is called pentalogy. So these are all the other congenital heart disease which can be associated with pulmonary stenosis. Among acquired group, it is mainly involvement of the 3 cusp. By and large, it is a 3 cusp, and most common cause is rheumatic heart disease. We have already told you can divide into valvular, subvalvular or supravalvular. Subvalvular is also called infundibular stenosis. Depending upon the diameter or the area of pulmonary valvular opening, mild, moderate and severe. We have already told you etiology wise congenital. It will account for 7 to 10% of all congenital heart disease. It can be isolated or it can be associated with ASD, PDA and VSD. By and large, congenital isolated is usually bicuspid valve. There are some syndromes which can be associated with pulmonary stenosis like Noonan syndrome. It can be associated with other congenital heart disease like intact ventricular septum or without ventricular septum. Without ventricular septum, that is interventricular septal defect, or we call VSD, very commonly associated in a tetralogy of Fallot. Among acquired group, we have told you one group, that is rheumatic heart disease, and another is carcinoid syndrome. Now, depending upon the severity of pulmonary stenosis, usually they are mild, and when they are mild, there is an increase after load on right ventricle because the area of pulmonary valvular opening during right ventricular systole is narrow, so it increases the resistance, and because of increase in resistance, the right ventricular pressure is increased because of increase in afterload, because there is increase in pulmonary vascular resistance, and that will result into right ventricular hypertrophy. Slowly there will be elevation of a right ventricular pressure. Right ventricular pressure will be elevated, right atrial pressure will be elevated, and person will have elevation of pressure in superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, ending up into right ventricular failure. When right ventricular pressure increases, it may become even more than systemic pressure. So when it becomes more than systemic pressure, in case of other congenital heart disease, it may end up into reversal of the shunt. Secondary to the stenosis, there will be little dilatation of the main pulmonary artery. We call it a post-stenotic dilatation. And when there is a severe stenosis, usually there will be right to left shunt, and that will end up into cyanosis. And severe cyanosis indicates critical pulmonary stenosis. So as far as clinical feature is concerned, in a mild variety, usually person are asymptomatic. In moderate to severe variety, person will be symptomatic. In a mild pulmonary stenosis, the pulmonary pressure is less than 30. In moderate to severe, the pulmonary pressure increases up to 60 millimeter of mercury, where right ventricular pressure will be markedly elevated and you will have a congestive cardiac failure. There will be prominent A wave in JVP. Because of right ventricular hypertrophy, there will be a right ventricular parasternal heave. Second heart sound will be split and loud. There will be ejection click when there is a valvular stenosis, followed by a ejection systolic crescendo decrescendo murmur, and person invariably with a tight pulmonary stenosis, or we call moderate to severe pulmonary stenosis, will have a right ventricular failure. In a case of a tetralogy of Fallot, when stenosis is severe, it will end into cyanosis and hypoxic spells. In investigation, X-ray chest will show you a mild cardiomegaly, mainly RVH and RAE. There will be pulmonary oligemia because there is a tight pulmonary stenosis or pulmonary atresia will have a severe pulmonary oligemia. ECG will show you RVH and RAE. And if RAE is very big, it might produce atrial flutter fibrillation. And secondary to atrial flutter fibrillation, you can have a thromboembolic phenomena ending into pulmonary embolism. And in case of reversal of the shunt, systemic embolization, or we call paradoxical embolization. This pulmonary valve can be involved by infective endocarditis and can destroy the pulmonary valve, ending up into pulmonary regurgitation. Echocardiography will tell you the type of a valve, whether bicuspid or tricuspid. We'll also be able to identify valvular, subvalvular and supravalvular. Depending upon the pressure gradient and depending upon the area of opening, you can divide into mild, moderate and severe, where Doppler will give you a best answer. Also, you can identify associated defects like tetralogy of Fallot, where there is a VSD with overriding of aorta, or there may be pure isolated ventricular septal defect without overriding of aorta. Also, right ventricular hypertrophy and diastolic pressure right atrial enlargement, infective endocarditis, thrombus formation in right atrium, etc. can be also identified by echocardiography. Mainly you will have to differentiate in the congenital and acquired variety and whether it is associated, isolated or associated with other congenital heart defects. You will have to also differentiate from other valvular heart disease where you get a pulmonary flow murmur like ASD and VSD. Also, you will have to differentiate from aortic stenosis and other congenital heart defects like left to right shunt in ASD, VSD and PD. As far as management is concerned, mild pulmonary stenosis usually do not require any intervention. It can close spontaneously, but follow-up should be done. In mild to severe variety requires relief from stenosis, and this can be done by transcatheter balloon valvoplasty. So balloon valvoplasty is a treatment of choice. If it does not correct, then surgical valvotomy or valve replacement may be required. Usually complications, most common is right ventricular failure, infective endocarditis, atrial flutter fibrillation and thromboembolism, which will end up into pulmonary infarct, pulmonary embolism and pulmonary infarct. But if pulmonary stenosis is associated with other congenital heart disease like tetralogy of Fallot or with ASD or PDA, it can end up into systemic embolization. And that we call as a paradoxical embolization. Pulmonary regurgitation is absolutely rare variety of a pulmonary valvular disease. Most common cause is ring dilatation, secondary due to pulmonary hypertension or because of dilatation of pulmonary artery secondary to connective tissue disorders or because of a dilated cardiomyopathy involving right ventricular chamber. So it is usually following a big dilatation of right ventricular chamber. You can get in a pulmonary regurgitation early diastolic decrescendo murmur heard based in the pulmonary area. There will be right ventricular heave. There will be a huge enlargement of the right ventricle and usually it requires a pulmonary valve replacement. Now we'll go to the another part, that is tricuspid stenosis. Part of this we have already discussed in congenital heart disease. Most common cause of tricuspid stenosis, again by definition, it is decrease in the opening area of tricuspid valve during right ventricular diastole. So that is less than 1/3 the original size or less than 2 square centimeter. By and large, the most common cause of tricuspid stenosis is a congenital, which can be involvement of the valvular structure or can be because of congenital atresia or one anomaly we call as the Epstein anomaly, where valve is attached deep inside into the RV chamber. Depending upon the area of opening, we can divide into mild, moderate and severe. Acquired variety of tricuspid stenosis is absolutely rare. By and large, it is always congenital. Depending upon the severity, you get the effect on right atrial chamber. Usually in moderate to severe variety, there is an increase in right atrial pressure because right atrial finds resistance to flow the blood from RA to RV because there is increase afterload on a RA chamber, which will end up into a big enlargement of RA. And secondary to increase in RA chamber, you can get atrial flutter fibrillation, thrombus formation, thromboembolism, which will usually enter into pulmonary artery, producing pulmonary embolism and pulmonary infarct. Also because of big dilatation of a right atrium in a moderate to severe variety, it can produce surrounding compression syndromes on esophagus and on trachea or on a bronchus. Because RA pressure is markedly elevated, it will produce a giant A wave in JVP. Pre-systolic pulsation in a lever. And in a case of atresia, pulmonary tricuspid atresia or Epstein anomaly, very frequently it is associated with ASD, where it will end up into right to left shunt. Hence, deoxygenated blood from the right side will enter into left side, producing cyanosis, central cyanosis, which will be very common in case of tricuspid atresia and Epstein anomaly. So it is one of the cause of congenital cyanotic groups of heart disease. As such, the tricuspid stenosis is very rare. Rheumatic etiology producing tricuspid stenosis is still rare. Isolated stenosis, most common cause will be carcinoid syndrome, congenital, or maybe sometime rare tumors in right atrium like myxoma tumor. Another rare cause is like infective endocarditis, which produces a big vegetation producing obstruction secondary because of vegetations, or Whipple's disease or Fabry disease, and once in a while rare drug like methotrexate, which can also produce fibrosis and produces tricuspid stenosis. But carcinoid syndrome is more common as compared to Whipple's and Fabry's. So these are rare conditions which can produce tricuspid stenosis among acquired groups. Among acquired group, drugs, methotrexate, infective endocarditis, etc. Like carcinoid syndrome, that will be among acquired group. But in a congenital group, it is the most common. Rheumatic fever producing tricuspid stenosis is again not very common. So these are the different etiology which you can see once in a while in case of tricuspid stenosis. By and large, when we say isolated tricuspid stenosis is absolutely rare. Usually in an isolated variety, always suspect carcinoid, congenital, right atrial tumors, metabolic disorders like Whipple's and Fabry's, enzymatic disorders, infective endocarditis, methotrexate. Rheumatic is invariably associated with mitral stenosis and aortic valve involvement. Mitral valve and aortic valve involvement. It will produce a diastolic murmur best heard in a tricuspid area. Depending upon the severity, the intensity of the murmur will be present. The management of tricuspid valve is usually treatment of the failure, congestive heart failure, and this valve will require a transcatheter repair, that is valvuloplasty, and if it cannot be repaired, it requires a valve replacement, surgical intervention. So it is almost very commonly associated with aortic and mitral valve. We have already told you that because of resistance, right ventricular hypertrophy, right ventricular output is decreased, hence the cardiac output in the left ventricle will be also decreased, because the blood from RV will go to lung, LA and LV, so output will be less. Systemic pressure will be elevated. Symptoms and signs of right side heart failure will be there: hepatomegaly, peripheral edema, JVP elevated, decreased cardiac output will produce fatigue and hypotension, etc. Giant A wave. Pre-systolic pulsation of the liver may be demonstrable, and you can also demonstrate enlarged liver, hepatojugular reflux, ascites, edema. We have already mentioned on an X-ray chest there will be a big LA, RV will be normal, ECG will show you tall P wave, no evidence of RVH. Echo will show you types of tricuspid stenosis, whether it is isolated or it is associated with other chamber, size of RA, RV chamber, infective endocarditis, present or absent, thrombus formation, associated defects, etc. can be identified. So, echocardiography is very helpful. Severity wise, depending upon the area and depending upon the transvalvular gradient, you can divide into mild, moderate and severe. By and large, the treatment will be symptomatic treatment for congestive heart failure, symptomatic treatment for atrial flutter fibrillation, symptomatic treatment for infective endocarditis and for thromboembolism. As far as surgical treatment is concerned, balloon valvoplasty, if cannot be repaired, usually valve replacement is common. Complication, most common complication is congestive cardiac failure, but RV is normal. Another complication is infective endocarditis, atrial flutter fibrillation and thromboembolism, leading to pulmonary embolism and pulmonary infarcts. In presence of TS and TR, mostly it is organic. In absence of TS, TR is usually functional. Tricuspid regurgitation is very commonly functional. Very frequently, valve involvement producing tricuspid regurgitation will be because of infective endocarditis, post-surgical, post-traumatic, more common. And functional TR is very frequently because of a big dilatation of RV. And that will happen very frequently in a person who has got pulmonary stenosis with pulmonary regurgitation or dilated cardiomyopathy, quite common. And whenever there is a TR, there will be a pansystolic murmur, bass heard in a tricuspid region, that is left side of the sternal border, and the murmur intensity will change with deep inspiration. We have already mentioned to you, functional tricuspid regurgitation is usually because of a dilatation of a RV. Once in a while, it can be due to even acute MI, which produces papillary muscle rupture or papillary muscle dysfunction, dilated cardiomyopathy. But organic can be very frequently along with rheumatic heart disease, Epstein anomaly, infective endocarditis, carcinoid syndrome, and floppy tricuspid valve. Rare, but may be there. So common we call rheumatic, infective endocarditis, traumatic, following valvuloplasty, Epstein anomaly, carcinoid syndromes, or functional in case of right ventricular dilatation and RV infarct producing papillary muscle dysfunction. Clinical manifestation, usually we come across a diastolic murmur. Along with that, you will have a symptom signs of congestive cardiac failure. Systolic pulsation will be present on liver. Hepatojugular reflux will be present. JVP will be elevated. P2 will be loud, and there will be presence of S3 bass third in a tricuspid area. ECG will show you very frequently right bundle branch block, RVH. On chest X-ray, marked cardiomegaly, mainly RB type, along with RA enlargement. Echocardiography will show you right ventricular dilatation, type of a valvular involvement, severity of valvular involvement, dilatation of RV, thrombus, infective endocarditis, RA size, etc. can be demonstrable. Echocardiography is the best answer for tricuspid regurgitations. In a carcinoid heart, you will see lot of fibrotic process involving valvular structures. In a floppy mitral valve and floppy tricuspid valve, you can demonstrate abnormal movement of valvular structures. Mild, moderate and severe can be identified by echocardiography and other pressure studies. And this usually invariably requires valve replacement. So we end our lecture here. I hope this will be helpful. Once in a while you will see this group of people.